Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining and welcome to the second panel of the day. For those who don't know me, my name is Diego De Biagio. I'm the CEO of Technopole, which is a technology business incubator based in Luxembourg. We are a member of EBN since 1998, and I was lucky to join this industry back in 2001. So it's a real pleasure for me to moderate this panel. It's a topic which is unfortunately impacting all of us right now. It's a topic around agility, resilience, and also digitalization in a very specific context, which is this pandemic, but also about future business models and how this crisis will impact actually the work we are doing in our business innovation centers. So when you say panel, you of course say also speakers, and I'm very happy to welcome three very interesting and diverse speakers today in the panel. So we have David, we have Rami and Maura. Welcome, everybody. I will let them introduce themselves and also what they do specifically at each slot of discussions we will have during the next 45 to 50 minutes. But before that, I will need to give you some information about how this whole session will be structured. First of all, we will start in a few minutes with two poll questions that we will ask you to answer, because this will also be used for driving some of the discussions we will have later on. Then I will start the formal discussions of the panel with Rami, and specifically talking about the context of Veritech in Lebanon and what the crisis has meant for them specifically as a BIC. We will then also finish this part with the answers to the poll question number one. And this will allow me to do an introduction to Maura, who will actually talk with me about the entrepreneurial ecosystem, the dynamics that we can expect due to this crisis on this environment, and also some elements around the business innovation centers, what they can expect actually as an impact on their activity. I will finish that section also with answers to the poll question number two. And this will lead me then to the final speaker with David, who is actually an entrepreneur building actually some digital software for coaching and advising also entrepreneurs. And we will discuss actually what kind of challenges BIC are facing right now, what his vision is about what the impact will be of this crisis on their business model, and how they need to innovate perhaps and rethink completely the way of working as they are doing it today. So before we start, then let's look at the poll questions that you are supposed to answer. I will invite you also to answer these poll questions by either clicking on the Slido box in Swapcard. So remember that for the event code to access the polls, it's hashtag EBN 2020, or to click on the link to the Slido in the global live chat that you have displayed on your side. So you have basically 5 minutes to answer the two questions. The first one is rather obvious. It's basically trying to understand how the pandemic has had an impact on your application numbers. Is it the same as last year? Is it less than last year? Or is it more than last year? So, and this will drive some of the discussions later on. And then the second poll question is about the future of your activity as a business. And here we are asking you actually to predict what you think will be the future after the COVID. Will your business go back to the normal? Will it be a blended activity with on-site activities and remote? Will it be completely remote, or mostly remote and only occasionally on-site? So this will also be interesting to put in perspective then compared to the type of business innovation centers and the locations. So, and then at the end, 1 minute before the end or 3 minutes before the end, I will ask you also to be ready to switch afterwards to the meet the speaker session, because that's the part where you will be interacting with the three speakers and myself on specific questions you might have and that alike. So I think I'm done with introduction. I will now switch to Rami. Hello, Rami. Hope you're
Hi,
doing
Diego.
fine. So as promised, I will ask you to start off with a short presentation of yourself and also what you do at Veritech so that the people understand the context of which we are talking here.
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Rami Boujoude, and I'm the Deputy General Manager of Veritech. Veritech is an organization that supports entrepreneurship in Lebanon and in the region. We are an incubator, an accelerator, and have several facilities to host entrepreneurs as well. And we run programs through different verticals, ICT for sure, through horizontally and vertically, but we have verticals in the agri-food sector, in the clean tech sector, and in the social and scalable entrepreneurship. So this is Veritech. We've been with EBN since 2003, and I've joined Veritech in 2014, and it has been quite an interesting journey with everything that's happening.
Thank you very much for this introduction, Rami. I will start with, actually, when Luca told me that you were part of this panel, I was quite happy because I thought, wow, that's a very interesting case. I think Lebanon is not an easy country to do business, I guess. It's geopolitically situated in a very specific context. You are probably facing much more crises or external factors than most of our BICs in the network. So first question, very simple, is what is this crisis different than the other ones that you might have faced in the last years?
Okay. So Lebanon have been, we've passed through different crises. Lebanon is in a hotbed of, geopolitical situation. We're in the East Mediterranean and what they call the Middle East. So it's always tough. But Lebanon has always been resilient. We've been passing through difficult times, but the entrepreneurship scene, the Lebanese in general tend to be very much, entrepreneurship in their mindset. They tend to, the private sector is very much thriving, and we tend to trade and work across the globe, and we have a large diaspora now. With the last, I would say, year, we've been facing much more challenges than the rest of the world, and that started, to aggravate in October. So in October 2019, we had a major situation in Lebanon where we had, the people went to the streets. We had riots. We had an issue with capital control. All the bank accounts were frozen, so all the entrepreneurs who had money in the bank were not able to access them, which put a whole holding. All the entrepreneurs, all the businesses, all the people had limitations to access money and work with it. In addition to that, we were seeing the economy dwindling down. We've seen a lot of people losing jobs. We've had a major inflation and a devaluation of the currency of almost 600%, which is really affecting everybody around. So unemployment have increased. Stability on the streets has increased. And then came COVID. So you have all of this happening, and then you got COVID. And well, the last thing that hit Lebanon or Beirut was the blast that happened on August 4th. And, that not only affected, people. We've had more than 200 people, 200 deaths and 6,000 people injured, but we had about 300,000 businesses that were affected directly or indirectly, including Veritech. We've had one of our facilities, one of our incubation buildings that was completely destroyed. The other two had damages, but one that is still under repairs since August, and we don't think we'll be able to go in before next month. So it has been a very difficult period for Veritech over the last year, but I think we're still driving. So.
Yeah, so you mentioned the word resilience, agility, also to adapt, etc. So I guess because you faced this initial crisis of your context in October 1919 actually already, did you already implement some aspects that were proven to be fruitful for the COVID period afterwards, like online coaching, like remote staff, or changing some part of the business services that you had?
Yeah, no, I think on that front we were ahead of the curve.
Okay.
Not necessarily in in the best way, but we were really ahead of the curve. So when the curfew hit Lebanon in March, we were really ready for it. So in October, when the uprising started, we've had roadblocks, we've had entrepreneurs coming from different regions they could not reach. So we shifted right through October to move into digital platforms. So a lot of our coaching sessions, a lot of our incubation acceleration sessions, a lot of the mentor, we onboarded everybody on digital platforms. So I think the team is have never been so digital since before the crisis have pushed us to be more on digital platforms. So the Trello board started moving, the Slack communication started moving, the team platform was fully in place, and then we started onboarding the Zoom calls, and we started onboarding the startups, we started onboarding the mentors, the coaches, and everybody we needed to deal with. I think all the businesses also started moving into virtual and video conferencing way ahead of the March lockdown globally, which gave us a head start. One thing that we've also done early on was crisis management, and I know that David through Growthfield have also developed several interesting tools on crisis management, and we're applying that, David, just for you to know. But we've started with crisis management from the start. So this was a very important way to try to stabilize the community we have. This was an important way to get people to hold off and start seeing what's happening, start realizing what they need to do, where they need to look. When your money is frozen, when your staff are in panic mode, when you don't know what you need to do next, when all the political situation around you is not stable, it's quite challenging for an entrepreneur and his business to continue. So we've worked with them on several crisis management modules. We've offered them different types of support. We've lobbied for some sort of financing to help them work on it. And lately we're working a lot with different donors and global communities to try to provide different types of trainings or grants or loans to help them with that.
So you basically address the entrepreneurs. The question I would come then, it's how did you apply it on yourself as a business innovation center? Because I think you also had to reinvent actually your way of working to use these tools and then also to make crisis management for yourself. So how did you go for that part?
Okay, so as we wanted to be applied on the entrepreneurs we support, we had to apply it on us first. So first thing first, when the whole uprising in October started, we started to organize a team. Their safety was an important area for us. There were riots, there were different things that were blocking the roads, so we wanted to make sure that our staff would not be affected. So the first thing was to onboard them on the different tools that we have and ensure that they're able to run them properly. This also affected our way of meeting and dealing with entrepreneurs. Some of our revenue stream come in from rental of facilities, including offices for entrepreneurs, co-working, and meeting rooms, and all of that was affected. So we started seeing less interest from entrepreneurs to take space, and we started seeing and with COVID accelerated that, we started seeing entrepreneurs downsizing their space. So knowing that the culture of working from home became more of a necessity and then accepted in the culture, people start saying, okay, great, let's move down from a closed office into a co-working space. So our demand for co-working space became higher. We have more people wanting to shrink down to smaller spaces. Our revenues from meeting room rental and space and activity went down, and this affected us a bit. So as a team, we went through one crisis management mode, digitization of the team, ensuring that we have multiple structured meeting as if we are in the office to make sure that we're following up on the team. We had to handle, the different concerns of the team in terms of access to internet, access to a decent space to work from home, all the tools. So we've equipped everybody with headsets, with everything that they need to feel comfortable and able to work, internet connection boost, you name it. So anything that would get things. And then through the management team, we went out on through different coaching for them to be able to manage remotely well their team. So how can we make sure that the team is able to, perform well? What type of tools you can do to make sure you're supportive, but also able to monitor the progress of the activities. We operate on a multiple of programs that are, time bound, KPIs bound with different donors and programs. So we had to align and adjust to that as well and make sure that we're there. And then we had to adjust to the reality of the ground, knowing that you have the whole economy shaking. What do we do? Do we have entrepreneurs that are interested to move into entrepreneurship, or that's risky for them? So we started seeing a bit of shift in the type of entrepreneurs joining. We started seeing a lot of people who are in their mid-career, who were laid off from their jobs, but had a dream to open a venture and saw this as an opportunity. So we started seeing an age group that was not necessarily there in the past. We used to work with probably a bit younger graduates, innovators coming up from university with a couple of years or more of work experiences. Now we started seeing people that are, in their 30s who want to move into entrepreneurship because they found an opportunity in the crisis and they want to jump in on it rather than stay at home unemployed. So these were interesting changes that we started seeing in our day-to-day work with the team, with the entrepreneurs we work, to be able to adjust and align with the difficulties.
So, Rami, just to understand a little bit better, how big is Veritech, the team running the programs?
So Veritech is about 77 people. 77 people. We have incubation facilities. We run 3 accelerators at the same time in different sectors. We do have 3 venture capital funds that we manage as well within the group. And we run a number of EU-related projects, UN-related projects, and so on that are focused on that space. And we run 2 clusters as well.
Yeah. So for closing up this session with you, Rami, I will ask you some questions which are related to the poll questions also. Mm-hmm. So to feed a little bit the discussion afterwards. So in terms of number of applications, what was the impact now? Did you see a lower number or a higher or same?
So it depends on where we stand. So when you look at the application for programs, we've seen a similar or a steady increase, and the age group and the persona of the applicants were different. So that was a bit of a change. We started seeing people with a bit more, corporate experience joining into an innovation space, bringing in the challenges from the sector down into an innovation opportunity. So that was an interesting approach.
That's for the acceleration?
That's for the acceleration program. When it comes to the facilities and incubation program that are usually paid by the entrepreneurs, we've seen a drop down of applications. So we've seen people that are, either downsizing or not necessarily. The acceleration program are funded usually, so that people have access to grants and support. So that's an opportunity to jump in and test something. And when it comes to the venture capital funds, where with all the lockdown and all the capital control on funding, we moved more into looking into how can we support those businesses. So there has been a peak in terms of SME support, a peak in terms of grant management, small grants of resilience to help them sustain themselves. So that activity have increased lately. The venture capital fund is looking into different modes. So they've also worked on aligning with some other funds and so on to be able to inject capital in a way to keep those businesses running until we see some stabilization. So there has been also an increase in activity, not necessarily in the size of funding, but more in the activities within the fund to keep up with the businesses that they support.
You already touched partially on it, but how is Veritech funded? So European projects, and you have these specific acceleration programs and.
So we are self-funded when it comes to the facilities. So facilities, we have about 12,000 square meter of space in 3 different units. So that's self-funded. So we charge for space, and then we use that to run the facilities and run some of the programs. We have a number of donor-funded programs. So with the USAID, with the EU, with the Dutch embassy, with UN agencies, and so on. These are funds that help us, run our programs, and we are part of a number of, Horizon 2020, NECBC Med programs, and so on, that are usually European funded based on consortium management. And the venture capital funds are equity funds, so they manage funds of the people who put the money into the fund.
So very quick last question. How do you see the future post-COVID? More remotely, more a mix? Will it come back to the basics, or how is your vision on that?
No, I think there'll be a new reality. I think working from home and working remotely will continue to be a part of the equation, but I think human interaction will always be of value. So I think employers or entrepreneurs will open more the flexibility for their team members to work remotely. I think travel will be less. Most probably people got used to do those virtual conferences like we're doing here, but I hope that we'll still have those face-to-face conferences where we could have a chat, enjoy a laugh after a conference, and do that personal interaction. And I think everybody in the business world would appreciate still having the human interface and the small pauses and the chats. But I think business can become a bit more efficient with less face-to-face and a bit more digital and virtual meetings.
Rami, thank you very much for your contribution, and I think for those who listen, he will be afterwards in the Meet the Speaker session, so if you have questions, don't hesitate to join us. So before I switch to Maura, the results of the poll number 1, I have them here listed. So it's the question about how many applications did you receive? So 54% said less than last year, 15% the same, and then 31% more than last year. So these are interesting numbers. Maura, welcome to the session. And I will say the same as I said to Rami. Please introduce yourself, who you are and what type of work you're doing in the entrepreneurial and research area.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maureen McAdam. I'm a professor of management at Dublin City University in Ireland. I've been researching incubators for the last 20 years. I had a corporate career before I came in, or from industry before I came into academia. And as a result of that, I'm very motivated by research with impact. So my research is very looking at the lived experiences of entrepreneurs within incubators. I'm currently leading a 1 million funded EU project, which is looking at the gender divide in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. We're looking at 3 components of that, one of them being technology entrepreneurship, the second being investor funding, and the third being incubators. It's a cross comparison between Israel, Ireland, Norway, and Sweden. So very active in both incubators and also the entrepreneurial ecosystem space.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So let's start with the poll answers. Are you surprised about the results, or did you expect that?
I'm not surprised. I think with obviously what is happening at the moment, people are actually questioning their motivation for engaging in entrepreneurship. And that may result in people actually thinking, this is not the job for me, or this is not the career for me. Where it's actually making other people think, well, actually, this is my passion. The other thing that Rami said, and it's something I'm very passionate about, is actually having more diverse applications. And I'm very delighted to hear that the persona of the typical application is actually changing. And that's something that we need for ecosystems. One of the key components for a healthy entrepreneurial ecosystem is diversity. And we need to move away from what I would say the 35-year-old white male and look at other personas and really open up incubators for all entrepreneurs.
Yeah, you're touching on a very interesting point, because usually people also say crisis brings some opportunities. I think Rami was mentioning one segment that he saw actually applying more to their programs. I had an interesting discussion here with a colleague of mine who is running the incubator at the university, and we were talking about the fact that I, for instance, experienced a drop of 50% of applications in my incubator, but he told me actually he doubled it. And the explanation was actually that they are more focused on student and on that type of entrepreneurs. And he said they don't find any internships right now. So they started actually to think about what kind of stuff they could do to fulfill that internship period. And they started to implement new businesses and also some doing quite great job. So the question behind is, do you think it's a crisis which can lead actually also to more entrepreneurship to solve this kind of unemployment issues that we might face?
There is no doubt that recession, restraint of resources, all of those barriers can actually result in more entrepreneurial activity. And what it requires is for individuals to apply the creativity, imagination, and to problem solve. So there's no doubt that in recessionary periods, we can see more creative entrepreneurial opportunities. I suppose the one thing that I would be cautious in saying, I suppose, is that it has affected all industrial sectors differently. So there are some industrial sectors that have been on a tailwind, so they have actually been accelerated in terms of, say, profitability and performance. And then there are other sectors, and we know them because we're involved, they're involved in our everyday lives, have been affected quite drastically. So I suppose then we can't look at all industrial sectors generically, but I can say is that there's no doubt if you are entrepreneurial, you will try and you will use resilience in order to find opportunities.
Mm-hmm. So coming back to the entrepreneurial dynamic for the future, because it's one of the topics you're working on also as a researcher, I think one question that or one thing that you mentioned that is coming up in research that you have been doing is that a lot depends on the environment that you are raised up and also the experiences that you live on a daily basis. For instance, looking at your parents who are entrepreneurs facing issues or not, etc. So, and you were pointing out an aspect that last time when we prepared this session, which was quite interesting. You said it would be interesting to see the negative impact of a situation like this for future generation, because people could tend to say, no, it's too much stress for me, the kids, and this is not for me, so I will change route and I will not go for the entrepreneurial route. Do you have more findings out of this, or is it just an assumption you're making right now? Or?
Well, it's a bit of both. It's something that really sort of interests me because, in terms of, we would say that entrepreneurs are family products, very much influenced by the environment in which they're brought up. So if you're brought up in an environment which is very entrepreneurial, if your parents are entrepreneurs, they're talking about entrepreneurship, and also you see the positive sides of it, you see that the lifestyle that it is given, and therefore you would see entrepreneurship in a very favourable light. But if you have had an experience, say, in childhood, that maybe your family have lost their home or become bankrupt, and they have been entrepreneurs, there's a very good possibility, and there's research to back this, there's a strong correlation that you may actually stay away from entrepreneurship. You might go for a corporate career, which seems more safe, has regular pension, all of that. because you've seen the negative side. So I'm very curious to see what are going to be the long-term consequences. Particularly children growing up in this and maybe have seen parents struggle with, uncertainty of income and also future income. Would that actually put them off? So I think it's definitely something. We won't see the real consequences of this maybe 12 months, maybe even years to see, the real impact.
So do you think that bringing entrepreneurship more in schools, etc., will even be more important right now?
Oh, well, absolutely. This is something I have been teaching for 20 years. And, when I started teaching entrepreneurship, I didn't actually teach a management student or a business student for the first 4 years. I taught nurses, doctors, physicists, engineers, because I was very much dedicated to this idea that it's enterprise skills for life. It doesn't matter what career you decide to pursue, but those skills of creativity, resilience, networking, marketing, all of those things are incredible skills for any employees, and never mind entrepreneurs. So yes, I do think that all of those skills are incredibly important, and even more so now.
Yeah. Another topic that you like in terms of research and you are interested in is women entrepreneurship. So the question here is actually, do you think that this crisis might have a negative impact on all the efforts that have been done over the last 6 to 7 years around women entrepreneurship, pushing that more in the front and motivating actually women also to become more entrepreneurs in tech fields? Do you think that that might be have a negative impact on that?
Well, I suppose going back to what I said earlier, that this pandemic hasn't affected two people the same way. It has affected everybody differently, and there has definitely been increased negative consequences on women entrepreneurs in terms of their domestic responsibilities and caring responsibilities, which will affect their ability and time spent in their entrepreneurship engagement. And I suppose one of the things that I'm very passionate about is representation, and particularly with incubators, that they have to welcome diversity of opportunity. They have to welcome and representation of applicants. So I think it's even more and more important at this time to look at the way that the incubators are tailored, look at the way that they are designed, and do they actually support the needs of women entrepreneurs? And those needs are very different now as a result of the pandemic. So I think it's very important to look at the services, the programs, and to see, are they really fit for purpose, and are they fit for all of the applicants? And whenever I talk about diversity, obviously, the first thing we talk about is gender diversity. And I see that very much as the opening act, but it's not the whole show. So there's obviously there's race, there's age, which Rami talked about, there's ethnicity, and there's class. So I think it's incredibly important that incubators are open for all and are inclusive.
So this brings me to my last question for you, Moa, because we were talking about these elements here, and then specialized versus generic incubators. I think there might be some incubators that have been, or business innovation centers that have been more impacted because they were specialized on a very specific vertical, others less because they were specialized, others even less again because they were diversified and had in that sense more a mix of portfolio companies. What do you think will be the future of these incubators? Will it go more to a new debate about how they should position themselves in terms of specialization or not?
I suppose this is not a new debate, because I remember being involved in this about 15 years ago, and it actually was that because I had done research where it had been a specific industry incubator, and one of the disadvantages that had been brought up was, yes, that it encouraged networking and synergies, but also that it also encouraged a lot of competition between the incubator tenants. So there actually was a lot of rivalry. So yeah, in terms of the generic versus or the specialized, I suppose it's always, you know, even investors have this in terms of their portfolio. You know, do you spread the risk or do you specialize and try to get the benefits of synergy from that? And I suppose, you know, we probably may be discussing this 15 years from now, but I think it's always going to be, it's getting the right mix, but also, you know, being reflective of what the needs are of the external environment. So the incubator is there to serve the entrepreneurs. So I think that should dictate what their specialism or what they should be focusing on.
Okay, thank you, Maura, for this session. I will now switch to the results of poll number 2. So the question was, what is your prediction of how future incubation and business counseling will take place? The results are 5% will go back to normal after COVID, 90% will be blended on-site and remote, 5% will be mostly remote and only occasionally on-site, and 0% it will be completely remote. So David, nice to have you among us.
Thank you.
Same question as the other speakers. You can perhaps present yourself and also say a few words about what you do at Growthfield.
Yes, so I'm David Maddy. I'm the founder and CEO of Growthfield, and Growthfield is offering a software platform and a CRM system that is used by incubators and other entrepreneurship support organizations to work with their clients, have a digital relationship, and allow the clients to do some self-service on the platform. The company is Danish, but I have been based in New York for 12 years, and we work around the world. We have users in 63 countries. So my life used to be to travel around the world to do our training sessions. And I was also in Lebanon a couple of times. I missed that, Rami. So now, of course, that has changed for us as well, as everything from going to conferences to doing our certification training has moved online. We were also already remote, having staff working in many different countries, so we were not affected that much, but we are certainly living in the middle of this discussion we're having right now. And I think the last poll that we just looked at, I think it's interesting to see that 90% of us have actually come to this conclusion that the future will be blended. It's going to stay blended even after COVID.
So coming back to those results, do you think that the 5%, more the 0%, it will be completely remote, that nobody addresses that actually or thinks that might be possible? Is it is it something that, because I know that you want also sometimes to be provocative towards BICs, is it something that you think they miss some new strategies to go forward, or?
Yeah, well, I think some will be complete remote. So the question was, what's the prediction of the future? It's the future for the world, for yourself, for everybody. But of course, also I believe that there'll be many more programs in incubation that will be 100% remote. And some of the participants here today might consider to launch a 100% remote program. Now let's just consider this from our own world. You as I, or many here in this conference, have participated in other virtual conferences. October seems to be the conference month, so this is my 6th conference in October, from NBIA to IEDC, ICSB, the rest of them. So we've seen that they have gone remote. NBIA, EBN sister organization, have already decided that all conferences next year are going to be remote. They have 3 every year now, and all of them are going to be remote. It has already been decided. And it's partly, I guess, a prediction that COVID is probably going to stay a little bit longer, or should be being prepared for that. But I think another thing that this have shown us, if we just talk about conferences and summits, is that it's very inclusive. I don't know from EBN, but my guess is we have more participants than would come to a physical conference. We've seen in the likes of the Americas as BDCs, they had almost double the amount of participants coming in. And I think that speaks to some of what Maura spoke about, which is being inclusive. inclusiveness. So I think whether it's a conference or whether it's an incubation program, going remote offer the chance for a lot of people to join who could otherwise not have joined, either because of their geographical location or because of travel cost, even because of illness, or for women, domestic responsibilities. That means that some women are maybe not traveling in the same degree as in some families as the male would be doing. So I think that aspect of going remote brings in a more inclusive offering is one of the things that's going to drive things more remotely. And it's interesting as we start talking about how incubators can adapt to the new situation, that all of a sudden anyone can launch a virtual program and make it available to the world. You are also no longer confined by those geographical areas, your national borders, if you have an offering that is relevant to the world.
This is, however, linked also to the business model of the individual incubators. I mean by that also the way they are financed, because often today business incubators or acceleration programs or business innovation centers get funding from their region, from their department, or I don't know what. So it's more local money that is meant to support the local business and local entrepreneurial dimension. How do you see that changing in the future, that these funding schemes accept actually that you go broader internationally with your geographical impact and might have less impact on your local scene?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think, yes, what we see in economic development, whether it's export promotion or whether it's in other ways fertilizing the economic development in a country, I guess there are two approaches. One is that just focus on yourself, just focus on developing your own local area, do export that benefit you and avoid import from other places. But there are also other ideas that will say you actually get more economic growth if you invite other companies and countries into your economy. So I think many times funders may realize that if they do soft landing programs, for example, where they invite international entrepreneurs into their country, or if they open up for applicants that can simply benefit from this program that they are co-financing, they may see that it will benefit their economy because of diversity, because those relationships that are created also means that the local companies that are supposed to create the local economic development will have an increased chance of doing international business. So I think maybe that's a way that some places we will see a mindset change. And then, of course, also there will be, as Rami has told us, be international funding available for programs. So if you're doing a global program, you'd find yourself shifting your business model, if you like, as an incubator. You would be shifting from having customer segments that are local and national, and you will see that your funding, clients, your funding relationships might as well be global. And you would need to develop a skill to approach those new funding sources. You will need to build new kinds of relationships that you may not have done before. And that would be an example of how an incubator would change their business model, focusing on new segments and developing new skills in relationship building that are more global.
Which would also help them actually get off this kind of dependency that they have of public funding in a great majority of the cases.
Yes, and isn't that interesting as we speak about resilience and how companies can prepare for the next crisis? Because I think if we made a poll and said, do you think there will be another crisis in the future? Maybe also 90% would say. We can imagine that it may be a health crisis, it may be like in Lebanon, a catastrophic event. It can be a weather event, it could be a digital collapse. There's so many things that can happen. And if we look at crisis management, or resilience. And by the way, we offer this tool for free that Rami mentioned. If anybody's interested, at growthfield.com/crisis management, it's a free visual tool to work with crisis management. But anyway, if we should advise incubatees about how to be resilient for the next crisis, one of the first things we would advise would be do not be dependent on one client segment or one supplier or one employee for that matter. So resilience is very much about broadening your scope and having alternatives. So I think, the advice that we would give to clients is the first advice we should take ourselves and try to diversify the business model that incubators are having.
Mm-hmm. So, but if I understand it well, indirectly you're also saying that some of these shifts can only happen also if the political level will follow and agree to set up new type of support schemes or programs that can actually allow also these kind of innovation structures to start going to that direction. Or am I wrong?
Yeah, it's already there, obviously, but I wouldn't be surprised. I would hope. I would say I have no little insights into that, I guess, but I certainly would hope that we see this trend. I do think that having for a company to have a global audience is a beneficial thing. I think it's a win-win. It's not a zero-sum game, and I think those international global relationships is something that benefits everyone. But that is, of course, a political discussion that is up right now, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. So I can just confirm, because Luxembourg is a rather small country, so we are very dependent of international entrepreneurship. And basically, if I'm looking at the numbers, the recent years in terms of applications, there were almost 38% coming from international countries, which this year is almost down to 10%. So it's really impacting also that part. And the related question is, however, okay, you can actually have a change in terms of mindset at the level of the Business Innovation Center, and also say, okay, let's go to these more international programs and let's try to be more on the map globally. The other issue I see is actually the capacity of the actual structures to run this program. I give you an example. I had beginning of, it was in April, we joined actually one big, huge hackathon in the music industry, which was followed by a 6-week program, acceleration program. And we partnered with many international associations or organizations, and we had more than 430 applications. So this, of course, means a whole new dimension also in terms of coaching, in terms of selecting the companies, etc. So how do you think that those can live together? Because I don't think that within a year you can actually grow your team exponentially and then just deliver these kind of programs, because at the beginning you don't have the funding schemes which go with that.
Yeah, well, I think it can be fast. And by the way, that's a wonderful example of making these things happen. If you have local funding sources and you join forces, you can get local funding from 2 places, and now you can still do international programs. And what better place than EBN to create such partnerships? That's exactly the kind of community that I think we're needing right now. But in terms of launching these programs, I think things can be done very fast, and they can also be done very cheap. And I'll give one particular example of that, and something that might be an idea for incubators to expand their business model, and that is to do virtual summits like the one we are having right now. Now, virtual summits is actually a business model. When you do a conference, you have exhibitors and you have sponsors and funders and all kinds of things. And it used to be in our industry that only large organizations like EBN in Europe and NBIA in US and so on had the capacity to book hotels, get a conference set up, and all the experience of running these conferences. Now, everyone can do a virtual summit if you have relevant content and you have the network to speakers and can put something together. And we're seeing a lot of people right now creating all kinds of virtual summits that are also reaching out globally and can be an income model. Now, even in an incubator, every incubator could launch their own summit, whether it's a business model, whether it's something that is offered for free. And just imagine that you launch a conference calling, resilience, be prepared for the next crisis. You could have future applicants coming in. You could make it global. Why not bringing and through social media and LinkedIn and everywhere, it could go out everywhere, and you could get a large audience, which would be a way to build a community that later may come to your future programs. So while you wait for funding to get to a vision you may have of a future program, you can build what in a business would be a pipeline. You start doing lead generation. You start communicating, not by selling people something, but by educating them and giving them a community. So a virtual summit could be a new product that could either be a standalone product for incubators, or it could be just a bridge for new programs. Another new product, as you consider your business model, would be the business of creating communities. And Rami talked a little bit about how the rental space was now a business model that is going down, but people still wanted the community. People want the community of the co-working space, right? They want to be together. Well, there are also new business models for creating digital communities. So if people don't want to pay for space in a building, maybe they want to pay for space or membership in a virtual community where you offer, and this can be on Slack, this can be on many different platforms where you have these things. So I think a key point for incubators resilience is to start taking the advice you would give to clients and even start using the tools you recommend clients. So if you are telling your clients that they should be using Business Model Canvas, you better be using it yourself. Or if you're using Growthfield, you better be using it yourself. And if you think Lean Startup is a great book that everyone should read, you should read it yourself. And maybe, Diego, apply the principles of launching your new business model the lean way. So you experiment and you try and you fail and you fail fast and so on, right? So I think that's what we need to do now in the industry. We need to take our own medicine, eat our own dog food, and then we really are excellent business advisors. Well, we got to show it by developing our own business models, be an example to the clients.
Yeah. So yeah, indeed, I think Rami mentioned a very interesting point before by saying that they had an increase in the co-working demand, etc. So I was just reflecting on that because we launched the co-working space in 2012, and we decided last year, it was end 2018, we decided to stop it because there was an increase of co-working spaces in our area, and we were saying, okay, that's not our main business. Our business is more the incubation part. So, but perhaps we will come back now and say, no, now listen, the situation has changed. We need to relaunch that part again. So it's indeed interesting times. Last question for you, David. Based on the answers of the poll that says that 90% or even 95% actually say that it will be more remote after than before. Did you see actually an increase of demand for your solution in terms of coming from business innovation centers, or is it just here a statement which is not followed by acts actually?
No, we've been very blessed and fortunate to be one of those companies that has tailwind, as Maura called it. So we probably didn't double, but we had massive interest, and our pipeline and all the people we've known through all the years, suddenly the time matured for them to have a digital platform to support the work. So the same way that you care for your physical facilities and make them attractive with all the things that goes into that, if you're offering a digital service, you got to make your digital environment attractive. And there's a whole host of tools that people are using like never before. The learning that Rami spoke about, of course, has changed things because it was already happening, and maybe would have taken 6 years to be where we are now. But in 6 months, everyone had become comfortable with video calls. And I think the big question here is, which is a topic for another day, is how do we go beyond Zoom? What's the future remote counseling other than sitting at a video camera? And that has to do to design digital environments and softwares that supports human interaction in the second best way there is, which is via screen. And
all this without traveling, huh? That's great.
That will be there too, but certainly as 90% of us agree, it'd probably be less. Yeah.
Yes, less. Okay, thank you very much to all of you. I think we are coming to an end of this part. I don't know if you have a last comment to make. I think I can start with Rami, then Maura, and then David.
Well, Diego, the panel was quite interesting. I love what Maura has mentioned about diversity, how important it is. You know, we've seen also an increase in a change in women participation in it, and some of them looking into the sector. We've seen a lot of, you know, in Lebanon, a lot of shuffling of industries. Trade is heavily affected, travel is heavily affected, and so on. And this used to employ a lot of women in our part of the world, and this have changed. And many of them are looking to enter into that marketplace and see how they can change things. And we've run a couple of programs that are very much focused on women. I want to add to what David mentioned is that, you know, all those online conferences offer the chance for organizations to be able to attract, keynote speakers and experts from around the globe. And it doesn't cost you anymore a flight and a business accommodation and a VIP lounge and you name it to get them in. If you're able to attract them to the right topic and to the right audience, you'll be able to bring in a lot of knowledge. And this is where, content is king. Last but not least, hopefully we'll start seeing, holograms of us moving from one place to another. With social distancing, holograms are very close to what we are doing now, I guess. With no touching and hugging. Being a Mediterranean person, I think this is quite missed. But well, I think time would tell. And like anything, when there's crisis, there's opportunity, and I hope that people will be able to adapt and adjust, especially EUBICs, to be able to offer, value content, value services in such a hybrid way that, our entrepreneurs and the economy will see another boost after this drop down across the globe.
Yeah, thank you, Rami. Maura? You need to unmute.
I suppose just a quick thing, and I suppose it's building on what David said, is that yes, we have been able to replicate connectivity with online platforms, but we need to now be thinking about how do we take that one step further, particularly if we're trying to, although not 100% replicate the networking in incubators, because, all of the bumping into people in the cafeteria, all of the just accidentally bumping into people. So we have to think about how do we take it to the next level. And one of the things is that it will take a bit of effort because, networking, as the word sort of gives it away, is work. So it actually will take follow-on calls and all of that. But there is something now that we have to take it to the next stage and think about what that is. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you. David, last word for you.
Yes, well, I think we can also have some confidence in human race to build relationships on a distance. Because we have to, even before video calls, remember phone calls? We used to have them. I don't have phone calls anymore. 6 months ago, I would usually use the phone. If I was going to call Rami, we would probably do it on the phone. I don't do that anymore. Now it's video. But even before the phone, humans communicated through letters and could build strong bonds and relationship through writing a letter and sending it in the mail. So I'm hopeful. That will be my last word. I'm hopeful that we will find ways to do this, and whether it's holograms or whether it's some other spacious digital environments, I think content is king, relationship is king, and even if we couldn't be together in person today, I think we all can feel a connection, and we had a great conversation. And thank you so much, Diego, for leading that in such an excellent way.